The Breakfast Club wasn't just a teen comedy about detention. It was a raw, unfiltered look at the fragile architecture of adolescence, built on improvisation, tension, and a production teetering on chaos. Behind those iconic moments in the Shermer High Library, tempers flared, scenes collapsed, and the cast's off-screen drama blurred into their on-screen roles. From grueling overnight shoots to secret director power plays, the set was a pressure cooker of emotions. Today, we're opening the door to 17 strange facts about The Breakfast Club that will make you see this 1985 classic in a whole new light. And wait until you hear the bonus fact. It's the one piece of truth even the cast still struggles to talk about. Let's begin. 1. The library was completely fake. The cavernous library where the entire movie takes place? It didn't exist. The crew built it from scratch inside the gym of Maine North High School in Des Plaines, Illinois, a school that had shut down just a few years earlier. John Hughes insisted on a fully functional 360-degree set so the camera could move freely without breaking immersion. This meant installing working lights, bookshelves, and even a mezzanine that could support the actors' weight. It wasn't a cheap decision. Universal sunk a surprising chunk of the budget into it. What audiences didn't know was that the gym's old basketball floor still sat beneath the carpet, creating awkward sound challenges for the boom operators. In the end, the library became as much a character as the students themselves, a sprawling stage for confession, confrontation, and quiet rebellion. 2. The cast rehearsed for weeks. Like a play. Unlike most Hollywood teen films of the era, The Breakfast Club didn't jump straight into shooting. John Hughes treated the script like theater, forcing the young cast, Emilio Estevez, Molly Ringwald, Anthony Michael Hall, Ali Sheedy, and Judd Nelson, into an intense, multi-week rehearsal process. Every line, every beat, and every shift in tone was workshopped as if they were staging a Broadway drama. Hughes believed the locked room setting demanded airtight chemistry and emotional authenticity. For the actors, it was exhausting but transformative. By the time cameras rolled, they weren't just playing characters, they were inhabiting them. The method blurred fiction and reality, which later fueled some real-life clashes when on-screen tension spilled into the green room. But the payoff was undeniable. The performances felt lived in, not performed. 3. Judd Nelson nearly got fired for staying in character. Judd Nelson's portrayal of Bender, the abrasive criminal, felt so real because he refused to drop character, even when the cameras stopped. The problem? His relentless method acting irritated Molly Ringwald and others who felt personally targeted by his sarcastic barbs. At one point, Ringwald went to Hughes and complained about Nelson's behavior. Hughes reportedly considered firing him mid-shoot, a decision that could have derailed the entire production. It was only after Paul Gleason, who played Principal Vernon, defended Nelson as just doing the work that the director relented. The tension, however, never fully dissipated, which ironically gave their on-screen exchanges a crackling, authentic hostility. Nelson later admitted he pushed too far, but claimed the discomfort helped keep his performance sharp. 4. The actors contributed. Their own dialogue. The emotional climax, the confession circle, wasn't fully scripted. Hughes encouraged the cast to draw from their own teenage experiences to make the scene raw and believable. Anthony Michael Hall's story about a flare gun going off in his locker? Pure fiction. But the humiliation he described came from his real memories of being bullied for academic achievement. Ali Sheedy's rambling lines about parental neglect were written from her own observations of friends in troubled homes. Hughes would let the camera roll far beyond the written lines, later trimming the footage to keep the best moments. The result was dialogue that felt spontaneous, vulnerable, and painfully real, blurring the line between acting and self-exposure. 5. The movie was almost 4 hours long. The first assembly cut of The Breakfast Club ran close to 4 hours, stuffed with extra monologues, longer confession scenes, and a subplot involving a school janitor who played a larger role. Hughes reportedly loved the expanded version, but knew no studio would release a teen drama of that length. Reluctantly, he cut it down to 97 minutes, stripping away several key moments. Among the deleted scenes, Bender's actual home life, more of Brian's troubled relationship with his parents, and a scene where Allison explicitly explains her strange lunch choice. The long version has never been released, leading to decades of fan speculation. Cast members say that if it ever surfaced, it would feel like an entirely different and darker movie. 6. Molly Ringwald wasn't originally meant to play Claire. When John Hughes began casting, Molly Ringwald, fresh off 16 Candles, actually wanted to play Allison, the eccentric basket case. Hughes, however, saw her as the perfect embodiment of Claire, the popular princess. To convince her, he showed her early costume sketches and explained that the role needed an undercurrent of vulnerability beneath the perfect hair and designer clothes. Ringwald eventually agreed, but Ali Sheedy never forgot that she'd almost had her role swapped. Ironically, Sheedy's dark-eyed, layered Allison became a fan favorite, and Ringwald later admitted she might not have been able to pull off that kind of mystery. The near-role reversal shows just how fluid Hughes's vision was, and how easily the film's entire emotional balance could have shifted with a single casting decision. 7. The famous fist pump wasn't in the script. The closing freeze frame of Judd Nelson walking across the football field and throwing his fist in the air? Pure improvisation. Nelson came up with it during filming of the final scene, seeing it as a non-verbal way to show Bender's quiet victory. Hughes loved it instantly, recognizing it as the perfect punctuation mark for the film's emotional arc. With Simple Minds, Don't You blaring, the moment crystallized into one of the most iconic endings of the 1980s. Nelson later revealed that he had no idea it would become such a defining cultural image. He just wanted Bender to have a triumphant exit. Today, that fist pump is referenced, parodied, and celebrated in countless films, commercials, and even sporting events. 8. The film was shot almost entirely in sequence. In Hollywood, movies are rarely shot in order, but The Breakfast Club was a rare exception. Hughes wanted the actors' emotional states to evolve naturally, so he filmed the story almost entirely from beginning to end. This meant the rising tension in the early scenes and the cathartic release in the finale were real-time emotional progressions for the cast. The actors didn't have to fake their growing exhaustion or frustration. They were living it. By the time they reached the heartfelt final scenes, they had genuinely bonded in ways that mirrored their characters' reluctant friendships. This method wasn't just artistic, it also created a claustrophobic familiarity that seeped into every frame, making the audience feel as trapped in the library as the characters did. 9. Paul Gleason added his own lines as Principal Vernon. Paul Gleason, who played the antagonistic Principal Vernon, wasn't just sticking to the script. Known for his quick wit, Gleason occasionally improvised cutting remarks that made even the crew wince. His infamous, "Don't mess with the bull, young man, you'll get the horns," wasn't originally in Hughes's draft. It was one of Gleason's ad-lib gems. Hughes trusted him to inject moments of real authority and menace, which gave Vernon a complexity beyond just being the villain. Off-camera, Gleason kept a playful relationship with the cast, often breaking the tension between takes. Still, when the cameras rolled, his imposing presence was so convincing that some younger cast members admitted they felt genuine intimidation. 10th, the famous dance scene was a last-minute idea. That chaotic, joyous sequence of the characters dancing around the library almost never happened. Hughes decided late in production that the movie needed a burst of physical energy to break the heavy tone before the final act. The problem? Not all the actors were comfortable dancing on camera. Hughes solved it by having them film separately, then editing the shots together so it looked like one unified dance party. Judd Nelson's headbanging and Anthony Michael Hall's exaggerated moves were entirely unscripted. It became one of the most beloved moments in the film, a rare scene where the walls came down and the characters simply enjoyed being together. And before we move on to the next set of strange facts, go ahead and like and subscribe, because the behind-the-scenes secrets in the final stretch are about to get even stranger. 11. The actors were trapped in the heat. Filming inside the constructed library set wasn't just emotionally intense. It was physically draining. The massive lighting rigs Hughes used to create the soft, natural glow of daytime were brutally hot, and the air conditioning in the old-school building was nearly non-existent. Temperatures often soared above 90 degrees, leaving the actors sweating between takes and makeup artists constantly blotting their faces. The heat added a layer of authentic discomfort to the story's tension, but it also caused tempers to flare. Crew members recalled that more than once Hughes had to pause filming so the cast could cool off in hallways or sit outside in the winter air. What audiences didn't realize was that the glistening faces in some scenes weren't from acting, they were from surviving the sweltering set. 12. The weed scene was surprisingly authentic. When the group shares a joint in the library, the hazy camaraderie feels almost too real. That's because, according to several cast interviews, Hughes wanted the reactions to be authentic, so while the weed itself wasn't real marijuana, the actors were told to improvise as if they truly were high. Hughes dimmed the lights, played music, and let them riff on each other for nearly an hour, with cameras rolling quietly in the background. Much of the laughter and absurd behavior seen in the final cut came directly from those unscripted moments. The scene's playful, dreamlike tone became a fan favorite, but behind the camera it was also a calculated way to loosen the actors' inhibitions before shooting some of the most emotionally charged scenes in the movie. 13. Allisons' makeover was controversial on set. The transformation of Ally Sheedy's Allison from mysterious loner to fresh-faced ingenue was always in the script, but how it played out caused division among the cast. Molly Ringwald loved the scene, seeing it as a warm moment of acceptance. Judd Nelson, however, reportedly felt it undercut Allison's individuality by making her conform to a conventional beauty standard. Even Sheedy herself expressed mixed feelings, noting years later that she wished Allison's arc didn't imply she needed a makeover to be worthy of romance. Still, the scene became one of the film's most talked-about moments, sparking decades of debate among fans about whether it was empowering or regressive. That tension lingers, making the makeover one of the Breakfast Club's most polarizing choices. 14. Hughes wrote the script in just 2 days. For a movie so rich in character detail, The Breakfast Club had an incredibly short gestation. John Hughes banged out the first draft in a mere 48 hours. Holed up in his Chicago home, he wrote obsessively, drawing on his own high school memories and his knack for capturing teen dialogue. The speed of the writing didn't mean the story was rushed. Hughes was known for working at a blistering pace when inspiration hit. In fact, he considered The Breakfast Club one of his most personal works, and he was fiercely protective of the script. Once production began, however, he loosened his grip enough to allow actor improvisation, which layered even more authenticity onto his rapid-fire foundation. 15. The film almost had a sequel. Hughes once floated the idea of reuniting the characters every decade to see how their lives had changed. The first follow-up would have taken place in the mid-1990s, with the original cast returning as 30-somethings facing a new detention scenario. Unfortunately, lingering tensions between Hughes and certain actors, particularly Judd Nelson, killed the plan before it could move forward. Hughes' later estrangement from Hollywood sealed the sequel's fate. While some fans love the idea, others believe the magic of The Breakfast Club lies in its ambiguity, the mystery of whether these 5 strangers ever spoke again after that Saturday afternoon. The unmade sequel has become one of the great what-ifs in teen movie history. 16. The movie was filmed in just over a month. Despite its iconic status, The Breakfast Club had a remarkably tight shooting schedule. Principal photography lasted just 31 days, a short window made possible by the single-location setting. Hughes kept the pace brisk, often capturing multiple takes in quick succession to maintain the actor's emotional momentum. This efficiency also meant there was little room for major mistakes. If a scene wasn't working, Hughes had to fix it on the spot. The cast later admitted that the intensity of such a compressed timeline added to the sense of confinement they felt, mirroring their characters' own inability to escape the library. By the time the last scene wrapped, they were both relieved and strangely nostalgic, knowing they'd never experience another shoot quite like it. 17. Simple Minds Didn't Want to Record. The theme song. Don't You is inseparable from The Breakfast Club, but the band that recorded it almost turned it down. Simple Minds initially rejected the song, written by Keith Forsey and Steve Schiff, because they didn't like performing material they hadn't written themselves. Forsey convinced them to give it a try, assuring them it could become a defining moment in their career. They recorded it in just a few hours, and it went on to top charts worldwide, forever linking the band to the film. Ironically, the members of Simple Minds have admitted they didn't fully appreciate the song's power until years later, when it became a generational anthem for anyone who ever felt misunderstood in high school. Bonus fact: the deleted, dark ending. Few fans know The Breakfast Club once had a very different ending, one that painted a bleaker picture of the characters' futures. In an early draft after leaving the school, each character reverted immediately to their social roles, ignoring one another in the hallway on Monday morning. Hughes decided it was too cynical and replaced it with the ambiguous letter narration. But fragments of the original tone remain, subtle hints that Monday might undo everything. The alternate ending was never filmed in full, but pieces of the script survive in private collections. If it had been shot, the film might have left audiences with a far colder, more realistic view of high school life, and it certainly wouldn't have become the bittersweet classic it is today. The Breakfast Club endures because it exposes the raw truth of adolescence, the longing to be seen, the fear of judgment, and the fragile connections that form in unlikely places. What looked like a simple teen comedy was, behind the scenes, a volatile mix of artistic risk, personal vulnerability, and sheer creative instinct. If you grew up on this film, tell me your favorite scene in the comments. And don't forget to like, subscribe, and share, because in the end, we're all a little bizarre.